Hey, what's up? All right, here you go, guys. Thanks for joining me. This is another video right now, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through and put together a video about strumming. This is something that I've worked on a little bit with you guys here and there, and I'm sorry if I keep on checking the cameras, but right now I'm up in my game. I got a condenser mic right here for my voice, and I got this really cool Fender that I'm borrowing from my roommate to actually play, and I have two other cameras to show the different angles so you can get a better idea of the strumming that I'm doing here. And this is an exercise that I came up with that I got from a friend of mine, or a couple friends of mine that also play guitar. Different ideas on how to get used to strumming and doing some bar chords and muting and stuff like that. So it's going to be quite a few things in this lesson, but I think it's going to be worth it because it took me a while to set everything up. So I just want to do this and just see if I can throw it together for you with some nice informative angles. That's why I keep checking. And the audio is recording, so that's a good thing. Here we go. So first thing is bar chords. Now, those of you that aren't aware, or as a reminder, bar chords is when you use your finger, usually your index finger, to create a bar that moves along and pushes all the strings together, all the strings down together at the same time. And one exercise you can do that's really straightforward is just to hold it down and just move up the frets, up in pitch on the frets, so that you just get used to that feel. But this other really cool guitarist, he taught me a really good exercise to do this, where you put your fingers down on the first fret, get really close to this fret right here. You're going to put your fingers down on that first fret, and then you're going to play the fifth, which is the string below the top, your main string, and then the octave, which is the next string below, 2 frets over, okay? And so you have a fifth and an octave, which you're making power chords. Common thing with guitars. I'm doing the best I can. I'm not much of a guitar player, but you get the idea. But what you can do is try to make that first finger a full bar, so it's a full-on bar chord, which it might not be like the best sounding thing, but it's more about the exercise and getting your fingers and your hands, the muscles in your hand, your left hand, to get used to it. So that's another exercise you can do to practice, where you're trying to make every note ring out as much as it can. For the most part, I got it, except for the highest E. Okay, so from here, this is a really good exercise for power chords and getting used to the bar thing, like I mentioned with your finger, your index finger. Now, from here, we're going to look at different types of muting, and what you're doing when you're muting the strings, if you're not totally sure, is that your fingers, see, I'm doing that, I'm not really, my fingers are just barely on the strings, so they're muting the strings. They're not really ringing out. Even though I'm strumming just as like I normally would, it's muting the strings. And so this is a common effect that guitarists use all the time. This is something that is going to be part of your arsenal once you get more experience in guitar. So this is just a very normal thing. And so what I would suggest, so you can get used to it in your left hand, what you're actually doing is you're letting it rest a little bit by not pushing down the whole time. So this is a really good exercise as well. So so I'm just doing eighth notes, up, down, or down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So I might jump around a little bit, but that's just kind of how I teach sometimes, because my brain is always just all over the place. When you're thinking of strumming, a really good way to do that is just like with downbeats, where you're doing downbeats. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? So if you're doing it with strumming, it's a really good practice to try to get used to that whole thing when you're strumming. So what I want you to do is try this exercise, strumming eighth notes up and down, down, up, down, up, because you're hitting the, let me make sure my angles are right. All right, good. And only press down and make the first beat sound. And then just loosen up, but don't take your fingers all the way off so that it's muted. And move up just for fun. So in this way, it works really well because you're getting used to not just doing the rhythm with your right hand, but you're also doing a lot of the rhythm with your left hand, because the difference between the notes sounding and the muted strums, it really helps with the rhythm of what you're playing. So in this capacity, I'm going to move away from this while still doing this sort of a simple bar chord in the left hand, and power chord / bar chord in the left hand, and I'm going to play with the strumming pattern in the right hand, focusing on that. So what you're going to do is try to do this sort of exercise, because there's a tendency sometimes for younger players to if you have a strum that's like this, so what we're doing, the reason that that's kind of a weird strum is because if I slow it way down, it doesn't flow as well as if you're doing a more standard strum that you would see a more experienced guitar player use. So when you're doing what the goal is to do a strum that's more like this. So what I was doing there is I was mostly making the notes sound with my left hand and letting go. And so that works really well when you're doing bar chords, because you can just mute when you want the rhythm to actually sound out, and then the muted strums add texture, but they don't play the notes all the way. But I'm always going like this. I'm always going down, up, 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 which is what you're going to see with most guitarists, most pretty much all professional guitarists. So and I'm going to slow it way down. Check it out. Now, if I was doing a different type of a chord where there's some open strings, it doesn't really work as well, because you can't mute all the strings that you're not, that you don't have a finger on. See? See? They're like sounding because I'm not being able to mute them in my left hand. So what I'm going to suggest is you get used to this idea where I'm going to still play that same chord. I think it's an A. And what I would suggest you try to do is get used to controlling your strums and only striking the strings depending on which way you're going, down or up. So here's an exercise to get used to that whole idea. Is just to go like this. All down, up and down. Now just up. Down and up. Okay, so that's fine. I mean, that's a good way to get used to it. But again, what you really got to be used to doing is moving your hand, and you're always moving, but you just strike the strings when you want the strings to sound. So here's a really simple, what I was doing earlier. I'm going to go really slow for the video. Now notice I'm not, even though I'm still moving my hand, I'm still doing up and down every time. I'm not hitting the strings every time. All right, so that makes a really big difference. It really helps to do that sort of a thing, and that's really what you want to like shoot for. So I'm gonna go back to that power chord, bar chord that I was doing, and just to get used to it, you want to really focus on this and see if you can make this work. Here's the exercise again. Up, down, up, down. Now just up. Alright, so just really focus on that and really get used to this whole pattern where you're doing this whole motion over and over, up, up, down, but you're not always hitting the strings. And look what I'm doing now. I'm muting also by slightly releasing in the left hand, and I'm putting both of those ideas together, but my hand is still going up and down the whole time. Up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down. I messed up. What it does is it quiets the strings, right? And it releases the tension in my hand, in my left hand, so I'm not pushing down really hard the entire time. That really helps too, because you don't want to get any injuries by overplaying or overstraining the hands and the muscles in your left hand. All right? Okay, that was probably a lot of information. I hope that it made sense and that it's going to work for you. Please check that out. Let me know if you have any questions. Hit me up. Send me a text message. Send me an email. Whatever you want to do. Please, please, please work on this stuff. Experiment with different chords, and hopefully it'll help you start moving in a direction where you'll be able to play more bar chords, get used to that sort of thing in the left hand, and also being able to mute. All right? Thanks for coming out and hanging out with me. I hope it works out for you. See you next time.